All right, hello and welcome. This is Jonah Topa School of Leadership and Development, Executive Graduate Program Semester 4. And tonight is another amazing presentation with Madam Robin Shyrell. I don't know if I'm getting the name correct, but I'm actually excited to have you here today, Mom. We are all great. This is our Leadership Institute, and we have amazing students from across the continent of Africa, Liberia, Rwanda, Cyprus, and just across the world. And they are all here tonight to listen to your splendid presentation. I'm actually good to be here, and I want to say welcome to another amazing section with Dr. Ruben West being our lead lecturer. I want to use this time to give him the mantle of authority to kind of introduce our speaker for tonight, sir. So the stage is yours, sir.
Thank you. And to everybody who showed up today, thank you. Part of life is showing up. As a matter of fact, I have a friend who speaks. He's in the United States, and his whole mantra is show up for your life. And a lot of times we think we show up for class, we think we show up for a lecture, we think we show up for knowledge or information, but in the end, you're showing up for your life. In order to go up, you have to show up. Now, I've been bringing some powerful speakers. We had 3 gentlemen last week, and I told you this weekend we were going to have 3 powerhouse ladies. And so I didn't disappoint yesterday. I didn't disappoint the day before. And guess what? You won't be disappointed today. But before we get started, I have to commend you. I have to commend you because you showed up. And the reason I'm commending you is because a lot of people will show up for people who sound like them, people who talk like them, people who's the same gender as them. But I got to commend you for showing up for these powerful ladies because they know something in the marketplace that is different than what we know. A lot of times for us men, it's easy to get our foot in the door. It's easy for us to rise up to the ranks of leadership. We have different elevation platforms and different people to help us get there. But sometimes for the ladies, they have to be twice as good, work twice as hard to get to the same place. And so in doing that, there's some things that they know that we don't even know. And so this speaker that I'm bringing to you today, her name is Robin Shyrell. She's from Flint City, Flint, Michigan. She works for GM, General Motors. That's one of the largest, the top automobile companies in the United States. As a matter of fact, Detroit, Michigan, they used to call it Motor City because they had so many automobile plants there. But she works for GM. I told you yesterday, she's the one that will walk around in the plant with her pink hard hat on, right? And so not only is she in leadership, but she does it in her own style with her own swag, and she does it her own way. Now, don't think you can sleep on Robin Shyrell. Yes, she works for GM. Yes, she does that. But she's a bad mamma jamma. She's also an international speaker. She's a coach. She's a trainer. We have a ride or die partnership. As a matter of fact, her and I have been around the country in the United States with doing events together. We've been international together. Her and I spoke in London, England together. Her and I spoke in Dubai together. Her and I spoke in Bahrain together. And I got the pictures to prove it. I'm not making this stuff up. And so when I talk about somebody who believes in leadership and who lives leadership and who walks as a leader each and every day, that's none other than Robin Shyrell. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get your iPad out, your notepad out, your pencil, your paper, whatever you're going to use to take notes, because note takers are money makers. And the hand is a digital recorder for the mind. Listen to this. The mind is for thinking, but notes are to remember. So you'll want to take those notes. Now, just before I bring her on, I got to make sure you can hear me. I want to make sure there's no technical issues. So if you can hear me and you're ready, just type in the feed, I'm ready. Just type in the feed, I'm ready. That lets me know you can hear me, and that lets me know you're ready. If you can hear me and you're ready, just write in the feed, type in the notes, I'm ready. Now you'll see some additional people coming in. Robin, don't worry, they're ready. I see the ready, I'm ready popping up. The people who are coming in, they'll get the recording if they're a little bit late. And so we're excited to bring to the digital platform all the way from the United States, Flint, Michigan, none other than Robin Shyrell. Y'all give her a virtual round of applause. Say, take it away. Y'all just type it there, take it away. Let her know y'all ready. Just tell her, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Otis, for having me. Thank you, Dr. West Rubin, my brother, for inviting me. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, you can. Okay. So I'm going to, let's see, it looked like it may be pinned on the speaker view, but it's not switching.
Has he already given you the controls?
Yes.
Okay, and just keep in mind there, Otis, do you have it so that they have to go into the waiting room, or is that turned off? I just want to make sure. So you.
No, there is no waiting room anymore.
Okay, fantastic. So you take it away, Rob.
Okay, so I do have a presentation for you all, and I am going to warn you in advance. There are a couple places where, one, I'm going to be asking you to respond in the chat, but then there's a place where I want us to have a discussion. So I want to prepare you to come off mute if you're on mute, and to have some dialogue with me about something that you may have seen or experienced, or your thoughts about it, okay, as we get to that point. So I'm looking to see, I'm going to get ready to share my screen. Give me 1 second. My computer is not. So you're talking about the technical difficulties, and now we get this set up. Let's see. Okay. All right. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the social impact of women in business and reducing gender bias in the workplace. So just got a few things that we're going to show share that I want to share with you with both of them. So Ruben went a little bit over my bio, so I'm not going to reread that for you, but there I am in the lower corner with the pink hard hat. And this one it's not one of my favorite pictures, or what I consider to be one of my most flattering pictures, but what it is it's a reminder. It's a reminder for me of what I can do, or what I'm capable of when I put my mind to it. It's a reminder that I do have the experience and the credibility to walk into spaces and to places and to do things that others have counted me out of, or believe that because I am a woman that I may not be able to do. And so sometimes you need to remind yourself, of who you are and what's inside of you. And so that's just my that's one of my reminders to myself. So I keep that picture around, because during that time I was functioning I'm not an engineer by degree, but I was functioning as an engineer in a warehouse where I was responsible for designing the reconstruction project. And not only was I responsible for designing it, working with the facility to identify what it was that they wanted and they needed, but then I was responsible for supervising an all-male, I'm sorry, I'll go back. So I was supervising an all-male crew of contractors. And because I was a woman, some of the things that I'm going to talk about when I get to the gender bias, reducing gender bias, are some of the things that I experienced in the workplace. So we're going to be talking again about the social impact of women in business, as well as reducing gender bias in the workplace. So one of the things that I want to make sure that having an inclusive, or make sure you understand, is that having an inclusive work environment, an environment where everyone is represented, it makes sense. It makes business sense. It makes sense in the form of profitability. Organizations that are inclusive are 2 times as likely to meet or exceed their financial targets. They're 3 times as likely to be high-performing organizations. 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile, and 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. So having an inclusive organization, it makes financial sense. But then let's talk about why it makes sense in the form of talking about social impact, the social impact that women can have in working in business. So we're going to do a tale of two women, and you may not be familiar with them, but I just want to, I chose them for a particular reason. So Roz Brewer is the newly appointed CEO of Walgreens Boots Alliance. Now, Walgreens is, it's a neighborhood pharmacy located throughout the United States and in Europe. What's significant is Roz took over as the CEO in March of 2021 in the middle of a pandemic, right? Sometimes you hear that women don't need to be in the top positions because they wouldn't be able to handle the pressure, or how will they handle pressure? How will they balance the things of their family life, and how will they balance the demands of business? Again, Roz took over in March of 2021 in Walgreens Boots Alliance in the middle of a pandemic, in an organization that in the United States plays a pretty pivotal role in providing pharmaceutical supplies, home healthcare supplies, medicine, things that you would need, or things that we needed to combat the COVID crisis. But in taking over in 2021, one of the things that she identified was she saw a need for more accessible, equitable healthcare, and how her organization could respond to that need would be by utilizing its vast footprint in local neighborhoods and become a personalized provider of health services. So in the fall of 2021, she, with her leadership team, rolled out a new vision statement for Walgreens Boots Alliance. And so the vision statement is kind of what drives the organization. And their new vision statement was for them to be a leading partner in reimagining local healthcare and well-being for all. Local healthcare and well-being for all. So how does that play in the form of social impact? Social impact is how we respond to our community, how we respond to the crises, the problems, the demands of things that are happening in our community. And so recognizing that each individual store, wherever it's located, that community may have a different challenge than another community, but giving the organization, or making the commitment, the organization having the commitment to providing what each individual community needs, to be a partner in that community to provide whatever they need from a healthcare standpoint. One of her lofty goals, or when asked about the Great Resignation, and so what's happening here in the United States, our employees are quitting their jobs, leaving companies for reasons other than money. If it's not a positive work environment, if it's not inclusive, if it doesn't stand for something, or their values don't align with that of the employees, there's what's happening. It's called the Great Resignation. So when asked about how Walgreens was responding to the Great Resignation, her goal for the organization was to create a place where employees love to work. And this was her quote. She says that the next level of leadership is making sure that you're listening, but not just listening, but acting and making people feel included in the environments that we create as leaders. So she had a big goal of creating workplaces where employees absolutely love to come and to work. And so there's 4 things that they're focusing on: is creating healthier communities, creating a healthier planet, forging a sustainable marketplace, and building a healthy and inclusive workplace. So that's Roz. That's our first person that we did our case study on. So the next one is a little more personal to me, and it's Mary Barra. Mary Barra is the CEO of General Motors. So the decisions that Mary makes directly impact me and impact my livelihood. And so Mary took over General Motors, much like Roz, in the midst of a crisis. But where Roz took over Walgreens in the midst of a global pandemic, Mary took over General Motors as the CEO in the midst of a self-induced crisis. That self-induced crisis was we had faulty product out. We had ignition switches that were faulty that had made it out to our consumers. Consumers had lost trust in our organization. And not only had they lost trust, but people actually lost their lives. Now, Mary is, in 2014, the first female CEO of one of the big three automakers. The automotive industry is over 100 years old, and Mary is the first female CEO. Roz is one of two minority or Black CEO women in the United States. Two totally different industries. Both women took leadership roles in the midst of a crisis. One was a self-induced business crisis. The other was a global pandemic. But when Mary took over, what she didn't do was she did not shy away from the responsibility. She asked the tough questions that needed to be asked. She recognized that there was a need for a culture change in General Motors, and in the way that we interacted with our customers, in the way that we interacted with each other. And so one of the things that she set up was our new mission is 000. And that's 0 crashes, 0 emissions, and 0 congestion. Now, General Motors doesn't just make cars. General Motors also sells auto parts. So when you make a goal of 0 crashes, you know that will directly impact your bottom line. Well, why is that significant? When asked the question, what's more important? Is it the bottom line or is it lives? It's lives. If we can have 0 crashes, then we can reduce the number of lives lost in automobiles, in automobile crashes. So she set out with this big vision of us having 0 crashes, 0 emissions. Emissions is chemicals that's released into the environment that impact our environment. And so we're going to produce products that are not detrimental to our environment, but that connect us to the things that we love the most, and that's each other, right? So since since Mary has taken over, General Motors has invested billions of dollars into electric vehicles. We have electric vehicles that are coming out at various price points, and that's significant because that's a direct impact on the communities in which we work and live. In the midst of the global pandemic, one of the things that Mary did that had a great, when I think about the social impact of women in business, is she converted many of our manufacturing lines to help with produce ventilators. The ventilators were necessary and were needed in hospitals all around the globe as we were struggling to combat the COVID crisis. So that was another significant thing that she did. But the thing that stands out most to me about the changes that I've seen in the organization in which I work, and I have 23 years with this organization, is her mission to make General Motors the most inclusive company in the world. Now, that is a lofty goal and a lofty mission in and of itself, but it's what she said after saying that she wanted General Motors to be the most inclusive company that struck me even more. And it's the quote that's on the screen, and it's not a title that we want to share alone. We want every organization and company to strive to do the same thing, because that's the world that we want to live in, where everybody can be themselves, bring their best selves to work, and therefore do their best work. So when I think about the social impact of women in business, what comes to mind? It's you get solution-focused, results-driven community partners who are committed to improving the spaces where we work and live. Women leaders bring empathy, authenticity, and balance to the workplace. There's a commitment to be profitable as well as responsible. That's the social impact of women in business. So now we're going to talk about reducing gender bias in the workplace. There are 5 things that are needed in order to be able to reduce gender bias in the workplace. And we first have to acknowledge that bias exists. We have to recognize it when it happens. We have to be willing to challenge it when we see it or when we experience it. We have to be willing to use our voice as an advocate or an ally for those who experience it. And then the last thing is we need to create systems to mitigate bias. And so we're going to talk about each of those in detail. So right now in the chat, I'm going to bring up the chat. I want you to answer which best describes your level of awareness concerning bias. Put an A in the chat if you're aware of some of your bias and you're actively working on them. Put a B in the chat if you don't always know at the time, but you do self-reflect to see if you've been influenced or biased in some way. And then C, you don't know what you don't know, but you want to learn more. Okay, so I see a B. I don't always know at the time, but I use self-reflection to see if I've been influenced or biased in some way. Just drop an A, B, or C in the chat. And there is no right answer. We can be at different levels of awareness along the journey. I see a couple B's. I see a C and an A. Some C's, we don't know what we don't know, but we want to learn more. That's understandable. That's part of the reason why you're in this leadership program. Couple more B's, okay. The self-reflection as a tool is a good way for we can go back and see and think about if we have bias that's driving our influences. So the thing about bias, so thank you everyone for responding. Okay, I see they're coming in more now, a couple more B's, couple C's. The thing about bias is that everyone has bias, right? The one that we're going to talk about is unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is defined by Deloitte as automatic snap judgments that we make about the people we encounter each day that are outside of our conscious awareness and that can negatively influence our thinking and decision making. That's the definition of unconscious bias. The thing to note about bias, or that I would want everyone to know and understand, is that everyone has bias. Every person on the call, every person that you interact with has some form of bias. And why? It's because that's our brain's way of being able to categorize and process pieces of information quickly, right? Having the unconscious bias or having those biases, they don't make us a good person or a bad person. The important part is recognizing that we have them, because then that puts us in a position to explore, uncover, and to challenge them. One of my favorite quotes by Carl Jung is that until you make the subconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So if you're not aware of how your brain processes information, you think that's just fate. You think that's just the way that it happens. So now that we're talking about unconscious bias, so now that we're talking about, yeah, our brain groups pieces of information so that we can think about things, we can respond, and we can react quickly. In many cases, that may serve us well. There are other cases where it could cause us to make decisions about people or perform in a certain way that's not always advantageous to everyone in the workplace. So what types of bias do women experience in the workplace? I showed you the picture of me in my pink hard hat, and I can honestly say, with the exception of the maternal wall, just because, and I'll get to that explanation in a minute, that's not where I was at that time. Every single one of the other ones I experienced while performing that job assignment where you saw me in the picture in the pink hat. The first type of bias, that gender bias that's experienced by women in the workplace, is prove it again. And the prove it again bias comes, and that's not just specific to women. As minorities in different organizations, you may experience this, but for the purpose of this conversation, we're talking about the types of gender bias that women may experience in the workplace. And it's prove it again. It's time and time again, you have to show that you have the expertise. Your work history demonstrates it, but every room you go in, every situation that you face, you're having to show time and time again that you have the skill set, that you have the knowledge, that you have the understanding. Even when you're the subject matter expert, you're required to prove again that you belong, that you've earned the right to be in the space that you're occupying. And then the tightrope. The tightrope is where there's a narrower range of behavior that's accepted from some groups than others. Sometimes as women leaders, one of the things that we're constantly dealing with, if we're very vocal, if we're assertive, then we get labeled as something not so flattering. As that we get labeled as being aggressive versus being assertive. We get, it's a negative connotation instead of positive. We don't always have the same opportunities to fail forward or to learn and develop in station as some of our male counterparts. The maternal wall, I mean, that's kind of it's a catch-22. As a woman, you can be criticized for taking time to focus on your family, your commitment and your competency may be scheduled, or if you're career focused, then that's also a disapproval, because as women, their expectation often plays that we should be focused on something other than our career. We should be focused on our family. We should be focused. So it's a catch-22. You can't win. If you're focused on your family, then you're uncommitted. Or if you're focused on your career, then there's that disapproving thing, because as a woman, you're supposed to be focused on something else. And then microaggressions. Microaggressions are those seemingly innocent stereotypical statements. For example, if you have a female counterpart on your team and they're asked to plan the meeting or plan a celebration, because women are good at those types of things. As a Black in America, one of the stereotypical statements is that we're always late. So if you ask questions, or if there are things about, well, are you going to make it on time? Or it doesn't matter that you may have had meetings or something that were scheduled back to back, but I knew that person was going to be late because of ABC, X, Y, and Z. Or questions or comments about your hair. They're seemingly innocent, but they're stereotypical statements that degrade or demean the person who they're levied against. And then the micro inequities. The micro inequities are statements or actions that are meant to marginalize. They're statements or actions that are meant to marginalize. One of the things that you may find is that a woman will be left off of a meeting invite. She receives the notifications or things after. The guys all hang out and they fish, or they all hang out and drink beer or play game or do involved in some social activity where it's something that just the guys may be invited to, but then decisions are made, and so she's left out or left behind. So those are types of gender biases that women experience in the workplace. One story that I can share with you is we were working on a project, a peer of mine and I, we were working on a project, and there was a problem and no one could figure out how to solve this problem. We were trying to move material within the system, within the warehouse system. And I came up with a solution on how to move the material. And I was sharing it with my counterpart, and he was all excited about it. And so we were, working together. I was moving the material throughout the system. Well, I tried to share it with others in our group, the other male partners in our group, and no one would listen. They wouldn't listen to me. And so it finally came a point where I actually asked him, I said, tell them the same thing that I told you. I gave him verbatim what the solution was and the information that I wanted him to share. When he presented the information, our other male cohorts or counterparts, they listened. In reflecting on the experience afterwards, he was shocked, but I think it gave him insight into my experience, or my personal experience as a female in the organization. But he acknowledged that if he hadn't have witnessed it with me, he wouldn't have believed it happened. He never would have thought something like that would have happened in our workplace. So now let's talk about how can we challenge gender bias. As leaders, as peers, as subordinates, we can lead from the front. And you don't have to be in the top position to be a leader. Leading from the front means that we demonstrate what that acceptable behavior is. We model how the behavior is supposed to be. And if we are the particular leader, if we are the one that's in the position of authority, then we set the clear expectation on what the behaviors are that are acceptable. The next thing that we can do in challenging the gender bias is to address the issue in the moment publicly. Excuse me. When something happens or when we see a person that's marginalized, you want to stop. The intent is not to demean the person who made the comment or demean the person who did the thing, but it's to use it as a learning lesson, right? We want to be able to identify the behavior so that everyone else on the team or in the group can recognize the behavior that took place. And so now, because we've taken the opportunity to know what that behavior is that reflects gender bias, how we've demeaned our coworkers or our peers, now we know how to take action and not to allow it to happen again. And then the next thing that we would do is we want to make detailed notes about the incident. Just in case the behavior is not corrected, you want to make sure that you're documenting the who said what, who was involved, how did people respond, what was said. You want to make detailed notes about the incident. And so that you can use that information to counsel the offender in private. You want to share with them what it was that they did, what the behavior was, why it was offensive, give them some insight into what the ramifications could be, what the problems could be if the behavior is not corrected. And then you also want to speak to the person who was the target of the bias. You want to share with them that you are aware of the behavior that took place, but then you also want to reassure them that the behavior is being addressed. And why is it important that you reassure them that the behavior is being addressed? Because it doesn't take long. It doesn't take too many times for a person to be demeaned or for them to become disengaged. And disengagement, one of the figures that I saw said that it costs organizations $450 billion a year when you have people who are in your organization, but they're no longer engaged in the mission or in the vision or in the productive activities of the organization. So it's important that we want to, and we know that inclusive environments, right, they make business sense. So we got 5 things that we can do to challenge gender bias. Okay, so this is the part where I have a question. So I want, we've had some conversation about some types of bias and things that may have been experienced. So I want some conversation. Let's have a discussion. So have you seen someone experience bias, or have you experienced it yourself in the workplace? What was the impact and how did it make you feel?
Hello.
Hello. Someone willing to come off and share?
Yeah, Robin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Yeah, I witnessed it, and what I witnessed was exactly what you said, and I didn't think any of it at the time, but it was, we got together as the guys, and we were just doing what guys do, and then while we were together, we started discussing the business, and it moved forward to where we made decisions. And I never, as a matter of fact, after we made the decision, we thought it was a great idea. When we got back to work on Monday, and this was in the hospital setting, I was talking about it, and the lady said, "Well, how could y'all come up with decisions and I wasn't there?" And I kept trying to explain how you're overreacting because we didn't do it because you weren't there. We did it because we were together. And I kept trying to get her to see how she was wrong. But what you just showed was, no, she wasn't wrong. We were wrong. Like, somebody has to advocate for the fact that, hey, we can come out, we can have a good time, but let's not discuss these decisions without all of the team here, because somebody's going to be left out. And I just didn't think of it at the time. So that was one of the definite opportunities that I got a chance to experience that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Dr. West.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
So yes, I have an experience on that. So what I experienced when I started to work, in our office, we have one female, and a day we were suggesting on a topic out of 6 men and one female. So she brought her suggestion, and there was a guy in the midst of us. The guy said, "You are a woman, and that suggestion will not be accepted because we are the men who are going to do the work. So we look up to a man to make such suggestions." So I, in my own view, I felt hurt, supporting a lady that her view should be accepted, no matter what. We should look at the opinion she's trying to express so that we can take the idea, no matter what the effort that she's going to make into the job. So that broke me down. And I also felt the guys have been so biased to the lady because she's a female making her suggestions, and her suggestion was not accepted.
Now, how did she respond in that moment? What was her response?
Definitely, what I felt from her, she was broken down.
Mhm.
She was broken. Um, she decided to walk out of the compositions. That was the reactions. I had to talk to her, and then she stayed in a meeting. But yet still, some of this guy could not accept her opinion. So at that point in time, she made a statement that if the need be, then I don't think in every meeting you should call me. But I encourage her and made her to understand that a view was accepted. But maybe at the next time, it's going to work out. That's what I thought I could do at that moment. And she understood that. But she was broken down.
Exactly, and that's what happens, and that's when that's one of the reasons, you know, that people become where they're not engaged, where they no longer uh, offer solutions. You know, so you can miss out on great problem solving. You can miss out on great ideas when the thing, one of the things though, or one of the ways that I approach situations in the workplace is I believe that everybody has something to contribute. And that's whether the person is day one on the job or they've been on the job for 20 plus or 30 years. Everyone has something to contribute. And when you silence that voice, when you break them down by those types of activities, then you miss out on that contribution. You put yourself in a position where you miss out on that contribution. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else?
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Follow you, and then I'm Timothy Yaba from Liberia. Actually, I've not seen a female or any of my friends uh, getting experiencing bias, but I think I myself I experienced such.
Okay.
Or whether I applied for a scholarship, and then I was denied the scholarship only because I never had money to pay for the scholarship. In order to get a scholarship, and the only criterion to the scholarship was to obtain the GPA of 2.7, and then that semester I had 3 point. But then so I was like sure, I was sure, 100% sure. I said, but I've even crossed the GPA, so I think I will get a scholarship. Since I've been running behind scholarship and I've not been getting it, this one I'm sure that I will get a scholarship. But then all of a sudden, when I went on campus to check for my name, the guy told me that your name is not on the scholarship list. So I went back to where I carried my application for the scholarship. You know, some of the guys who work there started to tell me, man, you don't have money, you will not be able to get a scholarship. I said, but they said we should get 2.7. Then what? I got 3 point. We didn't talk about money. They are talking about money again. Then I'm going to get the money to bring it. The guy said, well, you have to do it on a grant. I said, on the table thing. So I felt bad. I almost broke down, and even up to now, I'm out of school only because of that scholarship that I missed. Yeah, so that was my own experience of the social bias. It almost like the ever same thing that I've actually been experiencing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing it, Timothy. So one of the things that from your experience that I want to share with the others is when you think about how that made you feel. So when you experience, when you're put in a position where you experience something negative at the hands of the others, this is where that empathy comes in. So remember that feeling. Remember how that made you feel so that when you're in a position where you're the person making decisions or where you're leading or where you're guiding others, that you are careful not to put someone else in that same position.
Robin,
Yes.
Sure.
there's a question in the feed, and it said, is it right for a boss to have an affair with a lady before giving her the job or promoting her?
No, that's not right. In the US, that's against the law. That's actually
Can I come in?
that's actually against the law. And so no, that's not right. Actually, that does two things. One, not only is it illegal, but it diminishes her credibility in the workplace. When one of the things that we experienced at one point in time is there was a wage gap, or and one of the things that or promotion gap, where there were missing women in certain levels of leadership. And one of the decisions was made was to promote a certain number of women at this particular time. And the intention was good, but everyone who was promoted, every woman that was promoted in that reign of promotions, her credibility was always questioned, because it was always felt that the only reason that she was given that was because of that mandate, to promote, was to promote. So no, that's not fair to put a woman in that position. We are more than capable, and many times, because we have to prove our skill set time and time again, our resumes have more breadth and depth of experience than many of the people that we're competing against at times. And so we're just asking to allow our credentials to stand, to allow our work to speak for us, and to allow us to have the same opportunities as others. I saw Morris had his hand up and then it just went down. Sorry. Momo Stevens?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello,
we
can
can
you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, so I'm Momo from Nairobi. So I kind of think that sometimes we do these things unconsciously, like we don't, it's like sometimes it's not intentional. Like the example you gave, right, where you said, you women, like you women are good at certain things, sometimes, we just say it, without even thinking about it. Like, it's like, it's just, I don't know how to really structure it, but sometimes it's not really intentional. I don't think, maybe it's just because the way we've been programmed, and I was just about to type in the box that, transitioning from this, will require collective effort, and it will require a bit of awareness. It will require a bit of education. We need to be, we need to be in the know, of these things. I don't know if I've made sense.
Yeah. Yes, you did. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Morris?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Maurice Repo. I'm a student from Liberia. I just want to share my experience with the team, none of my classmates as well. I experienced the bias on numerous occasions, but I want to be straight to one, because that one led me to be over those people who said that I was little to lead in. It happens when we were in a meeting where people were structuring a leadership. And when I was nominated to serve as the coordinator for my district that I hail from, there are a lot of people who were in the meeting, and some of them were like, oh, politics is not for children. We can't select this brother. We can't do this. We can't do that. So I was like, why are they doing it? So I decided to control myself. Therefore, what I learned, emotional intelligence, I tried to use that. So I felt quiet. I didn't talk anything. After the meeting, people went, and where my assignment place was to be, the person they assigned to the place, they cannot go there to perform what I supposed to go there and perform. So at last, they came back to me to say, oh, you got to go as coordinator to serve the district. So I do believe that when these things happen to you, the only thing you have to do is to control your emotion to see how best you can be able to understand exactly what is it. Because sometimes it might come on a bad pretense, and the next one is going to be right for you. So that was my experience.
Yes, controlling your emotions is a big part of how you respond to it. You know, when you're placed in that position. That's a very good point, Morris. But it's also, I also agree with I think it was the gentleman before that talked about the education piece, recognizing it, recognizing the bias when it happens, or being aware, allows us to, on our quest for personal development, then it allows us to, even though we made this mistake this time, or the bias was allowed to influence a decision this time that caused us to make a decision. In this particular instance, now we're armed with information that we can do something different the next time the situation presents itself. So if you have the skill set to lead, then it shouldn't matter if you're a young leader. If you have something to contribute to the conversation and to the solution, then that's warranted, and it should be, and your experience should be valued. Thank you so much for sharing. Harris?
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Can you get me?
Yes.
Hello,
Yes.
can you get me?
Yes.
You are live.
Okay. Let me applaud you for your presentation tonight. It was so amazing. I enjoy it. But I just want to share my own experience when it comes to bias. You know, I took over an organization where I was elected as Secretary General. And then I started doing some changes. But each time we are in meeting, whenever I give responsibility to those young ladies that was in the organization, they will also shy. They will always shy away. So it happened on numerous occasions. So I decided to ask why. Why each time I give responsibility, you guys will always shy away. Why? And you guys are female. You need to take responsibility. We need to gender balance this organization. And some of them decided to tell me that, oh, those first guys that held the organization, or took over the organization, they always, and bring bias among us. Sometimes whenever we about to speak, they will say, oh, don't speak. And whenever we decide to make a decision that will benefit the organization, they will always, trash our ideas away. So sometimes it shy us away. So this is why when you took over, each time you try to give a responsibility, we just sit mute and look at you guys. So I begin to say, wow. So the topic tonight, it fit my imagination in my organization. that are heading as secretary.
So you cut in and out a little bit, so I couldn't
Hello?
grasp quite everything. Ruben, were you able to pick up more?
Yeah, let me ask you a question, because you were kind of going in and out, and I think she said the same thing. I think I heard you say that there's times in your meetings or whatever, and there was ladies there, and did you say they didn't participate? Is that what you said?
No, I gave them responsibility and they shy away. And I decided to ask them why. Why each time I give responsibility and you guys always shy away. And they decided to tell me that those guys that were heading the organization first, and, you know, they decided to put bias each time. They bring up ideas, and you know, they will always trash it away. They will always put it aside. They say women are supposed to talk when men are talking. So you are just sit and watch us. We make the decision. So it
Did you hear that, Robin?
I did. So that is that engagement piece that I was talking about. So their experiences, or either whether it's because of culture biases or culture things that happen, you know, outside of the workplace, or the way systems have set up, have taught them or have conditioned them not to participate in conversations or in meetings or have responsibility when the men are around. So now they have been conditioned to shy away from those levels of responsibility. One of the things that, and that's something that I'm going to address, I think, in the next slide. But one of the things that I learned from one of my mentors, because I went through that. I had that. I've been in my organization for, it'll be 23 years next month. And there was a period where just what you're describing is how I interacted in the organization. And one of my mentors during a meeting, he asked me why I always sat around the room instead of at the table. And my response to him was that because they didn't value what I had to say, you know, and that I would save that energy for a conversation where people wanted to hear or valued, you know, what I was bringing to the table. And that is when I was reminded that I have something to contribute. Right? That I need
everybody
to,
put your thing on mute.
That I have something to contribute. And because I have something to contribute, that I need to insert myself or make sure that I am a part of the meeting, that I am not sitting on the perimeter. And I think that's one of the things is when we're gonna talk about in the next couple of slides, we're gonna talk about when we talk about creating systems. That's one of those things that's a system that has to be dismantled. That's a system that has to be dismantled. And it's going to take putting them in a position where they, one, know that they have support and that they have an opportunity for success. But then also, even more importantly, is that they have the opportunity to fail forward, meaning that they have the opportunity to take some risk, to maybe not get a desired result, but to get some lessons and some information on how to move forward and to try something different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of sense. Hello, Brother Ruben. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Still, yes.
Yes, my name is Vesey Brown. I'm a student from Liberia. And I have a question for you. I listened to your presentation, and basically you're talking about, being biased. So my question is, when someone feels strong about being biased, what needs to be done, especially in controlling your emotion? What can you do when you feel strong about being biased?
So when you say feel strong about being biased, you mean being the victim of it?
Being the victim.
So I know you guys had a session about emotional intelligence, where there was some talk about emotional intelligence. One of the things that I had to learn to do was to ask hard questions and ask those questions with a smile. And I asked those questions with a smile because then that took away the response that I was, I don't know if you guys have heard the term, but in America, there's this term, or in the United States, of the angry Black woman. And when I asked the question with a smile, then it took away the ability for them to say that I was angry. But I've asked some of my male counterparts, well, did that sound better coming from a man? Because that's the same thing that I told you. Well, are you able to better receive it from a male? Should I go and get one of our other counterparts to give you the same information? You know, so it's one of those things that I think that it can only be dealt with when it's addressed, when it's confronted. One, people may not be aware that the behavior was offensive or that they're engaging in bias. That's where that unconscious bias comes into play. So they may not be aware, or that may not have been their intent. But when you bring it to the forefront, when you ask the question, then you'll get an answer. You'll get an understanding, and they'll get an understanding. They'll get an understanding of whether or not that their behavior was offensive or that they were engaging in bias. And if that was not their intent, then they will ask questions, or they will seek to do something different. So you should see a behavior change in how they move forward. If that was their intent, and they knew that that's exactly what they were doing, well, then you're going to have to look at other avenues within the organization to address it. But again, that would be even all the more reason why you have to confront it directly.
I think I got that. But speaking about being confronted, so when you feel biased, and then the person who is perpetrating the act does not know that the action is being offensive, it is prudent that you confront them.
I'm sorry, say that again. I missed the last part of what you said.
I'm saying, if you feel strong about being biased, and the person who committed the act, does not know that the action has been offensive to you, it is prudent that you confront them and let them know that what they did was not right.
Yes, yes. And this is where allyship, and that's the next question. That's the next point, is advocacy and allyship. That's the next thing that I have. So if it's something that takes place in front of someone else, and you're another person in the room and you witness it, then that gives you an opportunity to speak up on behalf of the person who was the victim of the bias, right? If it is something that just occurred between two people, one of the things is we have to communicate. As leaders, we have to communicate openly, we have to communicate effectively, and we have to be willing to ask questions. When we ask what the intent was, or when you make someone aware of something that they did, of their actions, their behaviors, and you ask a question, you'll get an answer, you'll get a response, and that will help you in determine what your next step should be.
Thank you. I think I got it right.
Thank you. Lydia, I think you had your hand up. Or Joyce, I see your hand raised.
Yeah. Hello? Yeah, I'm
okay,
there.
Go ahead, Lydia, and then Joyce.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
So let's go Lydia first, and then Joyce will come right to you next, okay?
Okay, hello?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, I'm Lydia, and I want to share my experience when it comes to being biased.
Okay.
I organized an organization for our early childhood school, primary school, and we needed to do some rebuilding. So in the process, a lot of my friends, we all came from childhood. So they expect me in an organization to always listen to their saying. So this boy had a problem, and he reported it to me because I am the leader of this group. And a friend of me and this boy, they've been having their online issues. They've been having a fight outside the group. And then bringing him into the group, she had a problem with that. So each time the boss speak, he suggests they will want me to put it aside and listen to her side. So this day, I called the boy and I asked him what's happening between the both of them. And then he explained how the both of them been having fight. So when I came, when she called me later on to tell me that I should take this boy from the organization. He's not presenting well. In fact, he's not supposed to be part of the organization. And I asked her why. She said, at a certain point in time, this boy insulted my father. And with that, when we in the chat room, I will not want to listen to him. So you being a leader of this group, because you organize it, if this boy stays here, I will not stay. And I tried to talk to her. I was not taking her side because she expected me to take her side as a friend, as a childhood friend growing up. And I didn't do that. So she became angry. She left the group. But I kept talking to her outside the group. And one afternoon, I think when she saw that I really meant what I said, that I will stand for the truth. And I will not take anyone's side. So after some weeks, she texted me on my personal line that you taught me a lesson. All along, I've been thinking that once we are friends, we grew up from the same place, we had a lot of good childhood experiences together. Anything you people say, I should do it. But for the fact that you were able to look in my face and tell me you will stand for the truth, and some things that I told you to do, you didn't do it. Though I felt offended, but you taught me a lesson. You taught me to be straightforward. So from today's date, I got regard for you. And she and I been like one-on-one, we've been like a good friend, and she respects me a lot. So sometimes these are challenges we face as friends, especially when you and a friend in the same organization. If you don't know what you stand for, you'll be carried away. They will force you to be biased. So that's a very interesting topic tonight, and I'm so happy to join in.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I think that's a good thing when you stand on the principles, then it makes it easier to manage, your convictions. It makes it easier to make decisions. And so even though she didn't necessarily agree with the decision at the time, she respected the decision. So thank you for sharing that. Joyce? Joyce, did you still want to share? So while we're waiting on you to come off, there was a question that said, what would be your thoughts on a society that promotes gender balance without professionalism or qualifications? I think that's undermining. I think that's undermining to women. I think that's undermining to the organizations. I think that, or it is my experience, that women can achieve the qualifications, can function with a level of professionalism. I think that if it's about the opportunities, right? If you provide the opportunities for people to get the training, to get the qualifications, then I don't think you have to engage in that. I think it goes to those fundamental opportunities not being available. So when that comes into place, or when those opportunities haven't been made available at the basic level, then there may be some additional work that has to be done to provide that level of, to provide that foundational level, to get those experiences to come up. So that may require some additional work. Go ahead, Joyce.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam. I have a question. My name is Joyce Pesa from Liberia. My question is, how does gender bias affect a business environment or workplaces?
How does gender bias affect a business environment, and what was the end of it?
And workplace.
in the workplace. How does it affect it?
Yeah.
In the workplace? So the effect can be detrimental. Every member of society should be represented in the workplace. When you have gender bias, what it really is it's you're interacting with one group in a negative manner based on something that may have nothing to do with them, a stereotypical belief, some culture things. Well, that causes you to have part of your workforce that's not engaged. And I talked about that earlier, is there are studies that shows that having employees who are not engaged costs companies billions of dollars each year. Not only that financial impact, but you miss out on solutions. You miss out on different perspectives. You run the risk of having what's called groupthink. And if you have a bunch of people with the same type of experiences and come from the same type of background, then there's a higher probability of them giving you one type of response. So you're missing out on a whole nother type of perspective. So what does that look like in the auto industry? That would look like you creating vehicles based on men or based on male desires and activities that males engage in, and you could be missing out on, and you would be missing out on that whole level of experience that women have. Right, so you would be missing out on the fact that our average height is shorter. So you may create vehicles that now we're not interested in buying. You could be missing out on, there's a part of your customer base that would be female, or potential customer base that could be female, if you are only catering to one gender in the workplace, or you only have the opinion or the perspective of one gender, then what about that information that the women have to contribute? You're missing out on that information. So I think it's very detrimental to have that for an organization to let gender bias go unchecked.
I see you guys really like this topic. This has been the longest discussion we've had. Here's what I want you to do, because we're going to be winding up here shortly. First of all, Robin, thank you for this fantastic presentation, and a presentation that is designed to bring awareness. It's brought a level of awareness that most people didn't even think about, because I know there's plenty of times where I had bias that I didn't think about it. Here's what I want you to do right now in the feed. If you enjoyed the presentation, if you enjoyed what she had to say, if you enjoyed the information that she shared, let her know, put it in the comments. Tell her what you thought. I'm not telling you what to say, but if there was something that you felt like you benefited, if you enjoyed the content, and who knows, Robin is one of the powerful speakers that we work with. And so as she finishes up her presentation, I'm going to allow you to comment in the feed, whatever you think. And then after she finishes up, I'm gonna let her have the final say. And of course, we've got to bring Otis back in. But I know she stopped to give us some questions, but I want to make sure she gives you all of her content. So go ahead, throw your comments in the feed. And then Robin, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for keeping me on track. So then the next thing was advocacy and allyship. And we talked a little bit about that. And one of the things to remember is as peers and as leaders, one of the most important things that we can do is to be an advocate or an ally in the workplace, right? We want to make sure that we're using our position or our influence to speak up on behalf of the people who are not in the room, right? Who are not at the table. So if you notice that you're the only female, or there are no females, you want to ask those tough questions. If you notice that assignments or projects are being assigned to a particular set of people, you want to ask, how are we divvying up the work? How are we dividing up the work? So that's the piece on advocacy and allyship. And so then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was creating the systems to help us address where to help us address gender bias in the workplace. And so we have to look at where bias occurs, and it occurs in every area at various levels of the organization. So it can occur in the recruiting or in the hiring process. Look at where the candidate selection is coming from. How many women are being developed, or how many women are being hired for different types of positions in different areas of functional positions. When you look at positions in an organization, do you only have women in human resources or in sales? Do you have women in the managerial positions and operations and in management? And then I talked a little bit about looking at projects or assignments, right? These are the things that help develop members of the organization. How are those projects and how are those assignments being given out? You want to develop a systemic way to distribute those things so that everyone has the opportunity to learn and to grow. And then sponsorship and promotional opportunities. Are your females in the organization? Are the women in the organization being given the same opportunity? Is there training or mentorship that's made available? Is somebody putting them in place or discussing with them about having a documented body of work? Is something there that tells them that they should speak confidently about the things that they've done in the workplace, that they have to be active participants in the evaluation, in their annual evaluation process? And so in summary, the two things that we talked about was the social impact of women in business, and that brings us that solution-focused, results-driven community partners who are committed to enhancing the places that we work and the places that we live. And then again, in reducing gender bias in the workplace, remember that we're challenging a system, a cultural system, a set of beliefs. So the changes may not happen overnight, but there's something that each of us can do every day when we're in our workspaces. And that's acknowledging that we know that bias exists. We want to be able to recognize the types of bias when it happens. We want to challenge it. We want to be an advocate or an ally for those who are on the receiving end of the bias. And then we want to work to create those systems to mitigate it. And so lastly, here's the information on how you can connect with me. Were there any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, I got a question.
I'm sure you do have a question. Somebody said, I hope you don't ever leave us tonight. She will have to go. But let me tell you real quick, Robin, do me a favor.
Yes.
Put your email in the chat, just so they can go to email in the chat. Put that in the chat. And then the question that they're likely going to want to know, and I want to ask you this myself, would you be willing to share your slide deck?
Yes.
Yeah, so if when you're done, if you can email it to me, I'll send it to Otis and he can share it with the participants. Now, who had a question?
Yeah.
Yes, I got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, I want to know between the two genders, which is male and female, which of these have positive impact or more positive impact in the organization than the other?
Can you say that again?
I want to know between the two genders, male and female, which of these have positive impact over the other in the organization?
What's the impact of the other category in the organization? I think the same, and that was oversight on my part. I think the same thing applies. I think that however people identify, we need to put systems in place to make sure that they're not experiencing bias because of it. As a female who identifies, or as a woman who identifies as, as a Black woman, I'm often told that I'm a double minority. There are things that I encounter that I've encountered over my 22-year plus career. But because like I spoke about earlier, because I've been on the receiving end of some of the negative impacts, it makes me operate with grace and empathy towards somebody who's different from me. I think if we all operate from a space of empathy and knowing and recognizing that whatever challenges we face, if you think about the worst thing that you've encountered in the workplace and how that made you feel, and then think about what can you do or how can you operate to make sure that you don't put anybody else in that position for them to feel that same negative way, then I think we would see a whole different change in how we interact with each other in the workplace.
Everybody put your phone on mute if you're not speaking. We have some wind background noise. Somebody's outside or something. Well, let's take one more or two more questions. Anybody else?
Yes.
Please, Faith.
Okay, so my question has to do with the gender balance and gender bias issues. So this situation happened in my school. I want to know if it is a gender bias or it's a rape. So this girl paid for her entrance. She went to do her entrance and she failed the exam twice. And she went to the entrance examiner and asked him, what do you think I can do to pass? Because if I go home to my father and tell him that I failed again, he will get really mad with me. So what do you think? Can you sleep with me and pass me in the exam? And the guy agreed to sleep with her. He sleep with her, but because the entrance is computerized, it's a system, he mistakenly sent the result and her failing result came up. So when she went home, she told her parents that the guy raped her and they went to law, they sent the guy to jail. So I want to know, is that a rape or gender bias?
Did you hear that question, Robin?
I did. That goes into a whole nother level of
integrity.
Yes, yeah. I was kind of gasping. I don't know if you guys saw my facial expressions, at the thought of it. That's I'm lost for words on how to respond to that when there are so many different things that went wrong. I think in that situation, there was an opportunity to receive some training or some support, and then it went into a compromising situation, and then into a huge integrity issue that could cost someone to spend time, to spend time in jail or a lawsuit. So that is not what I would classify as gender bias. That is something that falls into a whole nother category that really is an integrity issue.
Sure.
But what I will say is, first of all, her sleeping with him is not going to make her smart enough to pass the exam or the class. So one has really nothing to do with the other. The other thing is she's misusing herself to get what she wants. She's saying, hey, let me sleep with you and you give me a passing grade. The problem is it's a short-sighted thinking, because even if she sleeps with him and even if he gives her a passing grade, she is the type of problem that women face in the workplace. What somebody asked, is it right to just give them the job if they don't deserve it? No. So him passing you and giving you the grade that you haven't earned, then it's going to put you in a position to work and do work that you're not qualified for because you never really earned the grade and you didn't know the knowledge. So I agree with you, Robin. It does open up a whole nother can of worms. We have to think from a different perspective, and we see those issues all throughout the workplace, all throughout government. Those are things that we have to face. But here's what I want to do. Robin, thank you. You've went a long time and you've done a fantastic job. Somebody said splendid presentation. Robin Shyrell, extremely blessed and challenged on creating a system so profound. The presentation is life-changing and interactive as well. Thanks for the lesson. Very great presentation. I wish you never leave us tonight. She's got to go. It's Easter. It's still Easter. So Robin, thank you so much for the presentation. You guys, she threw her email in there. Otis, you know, I told you I was bringing some quality people in to do the training. Robin, do you have any final words? And then Otis, we'll come back to you after Robin.
Oh my, I got a question.
Oh my goodness. Somebody has a question.
Are we taking the question, Lydia?
Yeah, I learned a lot tonight. Thank you so much for the presentation. But to clear my final doubt on being biased, does being biased has any good side?
Yes, it does. Yes, actually, it does. So one of the things that that I talked about is everyone has bias because that's how our brain groups information to help us process things quickly. We want to be aware of the biases that we have to see if they are causing us to look at things in a negative thing or from a negative standpoint or make decisions that negatively impact someone else. So no, all bias is not bad. But being aware of our bias puts us in the position to question it, to explore it, and to correct it if in fact we do find that it's not giving us the results that we want.
Fantastic. Otis, please unmute yourself, please.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. I really learned a lot tonight.
You know, every time you bring people up here, they come with a whole different vibe. They come with a whole different story. They come with a whole different. I mean, tonight's section is one of the. Since we started the program, this is one of the most interactive sections. You know, I feel the interaction, and this is so powerful. I'm actually grateful to Madam Robin for this incomparable and exceptional presentation tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruben West. And she make me feel more excited because, you know, these are normal issues that take place in our setting today, most especially like area, the issue of bias art, ranging on a gender effect. I mean, it's something so normal. And we, you know, the kind of view from my counterparts actually raise a clear emphasis that we have to be in the know of these things, you know, and it's gonna help us to create a better chance in capturing our emotions and knowing how to respond to these issues when there are situations where, you know, the act of being biased has been displayed. I'm actually excited for this wonderful presentation, and I want to say thank you so much. And to all of our females that were asking these top questions, I do appreciate. And I'm just grateful to you, Mother Robin. This is something so phenomenal. I'm grateful and I'm actually excited that you are here to make this presentation a very great one. Thank you so dearly much. And may God bless you. May God bless your family. I'm actually grateful that you are here to make our executive graduate program, I mean, a phenomenal and exceptional one. Thank you so much, Mom. I'm actually grateful for your time being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Well, it's been another great session. Again, if you have any other comment for Robin, put it in the feed right now because